Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. If you're over 50, you probably remember dropping Kennedy half dollars, golden presidential dollars, and plain old Jefferson nickels into payphones, parking meters, and coffee jars without thinking twice. But what if I told you that some of those same coins, the ones you used every single day, can now be worth more than a brand new house? I'm talking about Kennedy halves pushing past $450,000, presidential dollars closing in on seven figures, and nickels so rare a single coin could rewrite your retirement plans. And tonight we're going to slow down, look closely, and I'll show you exactly what to look for so you never spend a small fortune by accident again. If you enjoy finding coins worth serious money in everyday change, make sure you subscribe to Quarter Dollar and turn on all notifications so you don't miss the next big discovery. Take a close look at this first coin on the screen. At a glance, it just looks like an ordinary 1960s half dollar. It's worn, the shine is mostly gone, there are little dark spots on Kennedy's cheek and neck, and the details in his hair are soft from years of use. This is a 1968 Kennedy half dollar, and this exact kind of nothing special coin is what most people toss into a jar or spend without a second thought. But buried inside this one simple date is a secret that can turn 50 cents into a jaw-dropping six-figure payday. 1968 was only the fifth year of the Kennedy half dollar, and the country was still getting used to this new design. On the front, you've got that classic left-facing portrait of President Kennedy, the word liberty wrapping around the top, and the motto, "In God We Trust," broken on either side of his neck. Down at the bottom, you see the date, 1968, and just above it, a tiny mint mark. On most of these, it's a D for Denver, and that little letter can make all the difference. Now, the coin you're seeing is in circulated condition. You can see the flatness on the high points of the hair, the soft ear, and those little contact marks all across the surface. That tells us it spent years in pockets, cash drawers, maybe even jukeboxes. In this shape, a normal 1968 half dollar is mostly worth its silver content. Because remember, from 1965 through 1970, these Kennedys were made of 40% silver. At today's silver prices, a worn 1968 like this usually brings around $5 to $10. Not bad for pocket change, but nothing that will change your life. But here's where things get interesting. Most people stop right there. They see where they think junk silver, and they move on. Serious collectors go one step further. They look for sharp strikes, clean fields, and rare mistakes from the mint. A 1968 D Kennedy half that somehow survived in blazing, uncirculated condition, with strong luster and almost no marks, can jump from that $5 or $10 up into the hundreds, even low thousands, especially in the very highest certified grades. Only a tiny handful have been graded near perfect, and those get fierce bidding wars at auction. And then, in a world most people never hear about, are the true monsters. Rare error coins. That's where this date turns from nice find into, are you kidding me? Imagine a 1968 Kennedy half dollar that was struck not once but twice with the second strike off center, so you can see a second ghostly profile of Kennedy overlapping the first. Or a coin struck on the wrong planche, maybe on a leftover thicker silver blank, or with a dramatic clipped edge, or with missing details on the back where the designer's initials should be. When one of these shows up, and it's also in nearly perfect condition, the price can rocket into unbelievable territory. Collectors love 1960s half dollars like this because they sit right at the crossroads. Modern enough that millions were made, but early enough that silver and striking quality still matter. That means most examples are common. But the rare ones are hiding in plain sight. A spectacular 1968 Kennedy half dollar with a dramatic double strike or wrong planche error, graded at the very top by a major service, can attract bidders willing to pay $450,000 or more. all for a coin everyone else walked past for decades. So what should you look for if you have a handful of these at home? First, separate the 1968s and check the mint mark under Kennedy's neck. Then study the rim. Is it round and even, or does it look clipped or off-center? Look at the lettering. Is anything doubled, especially in Liberty, or in God We Trust? On the back, check the eagle's feathers and the tiny initials near the tail. Any missing parts, extra outlines, or strange shapes are a big red flag that you might have something special. And this is the same kind of careful checking you may already do with your state quarters. Strong details, odd shapes, doubling, and anything that just looks off. That's exactly how people have pulled life-changing coins out of coffee cans and bank rolls. Most 1968 Kennedys will be worth silver money only, just like the one you're seeing. But if even one has that wild mint error and top-end condition, you're suddenly holding a six-figure treasure in the palm of your hand. And believe it or not, our next Kennedy half-dollar cranks the excitement up even higher, with a story that starts in the very first year of issue and ends with collectors paying more than most people's retirement savings. And we're starting with a Jefferson nickel that looks like it's been through 8 decades of rain, soil, pockets, drawers, and probably a few metal detectors before finally landing in your hands. This worn and heavily circulated early minted nickel still holds a story that's far bigger than its condition. At first glance, the surfaces are rough, almost sandpaper-like, with deep porosity covering nearly every inch. The date is faint, but the era is unmistakable. This coin spent real time in the world. But here's the twist. Early Jefferson nickels in this type of condition can still hide shocking value if even one tiny detail lines up in your favor. Collectors chase these old nickels not for their shine, but for what might be hiding under the damage. And because of how worn this one is, there's a real mystery factor here. The lettering is almost melting into the metal. The portrait is flattened, and Monticello on the reverse is nearly washed away, but that's exactly the kind of coin that gets collectors excited, because an old nickel in this condition might still carry a rare die variety or a minting mistake that survived decades of circulation. Even in rough shape, if this coin turns out to be a scarce early production example or a transitional die usage, the value could skyrocket in ways that feel unreal for something that looks so beat up. Now, picture this. If the same coin were found in even moderately better condition, something like a lightly circulated grade, collectors have paid 4 figures for certain dates and mint combinations. There are recorded auction prices where ordinary-looking Jefferson nickels shocked everyone by reaching $10,000, even $20,000, simply because they carried a rare die doubling or a misaligned die strike that no one expected. And the uncirculated versions of some early Jefferson dates, those have crossed into the 6-figure range, and we're talking over $300,000 paid for a coin that, on paper, shouldn't be rare at all. But one microscopic mint error has changed everything. The real excitement with your coin is what you can't see clearly. When a surface is this worn, specialists often look even harder, because heavy circulation can disguise a rare mint error that was missed for decades, a dramatic double die on the date, a misplaced mint mark, a wartime composition coin struck with the wrong alloy. Any one of those hidden traits could turn this battered nickel into a life-changing discovery, and that's what makes coins like this so addictive for collectors, especially for those of us old enough to remember finding nickels like this in pocket change in the 60s and 70s. Every worn Jefferson brings suspense, the possibility, that quiet feeling of, wait, could this really be one of the rare ones? If this coin were authenticated as a rare error, while in this condition, it could still pull in several $1,000s, but if it somehow matched one of the ultra-rare known early die variety mistakes, something almost no one spots anymore, the value could push beyond $300,000 in top-graded examples. Even a damaged one could still fetch a surprising amount simply because the variety itself is scarce, and that's why we start with this coin. It doesn't look valuable, but looks can be very misleading in the world of Jefferson nickels. Next. First up, take a close look at this presidential dollar. At first glance, it may look ordinary, even a little tired from circulation, but this is exactly the kind of coin that has surprised collectors in the past. This is the John Tyler presidential dollar, and the condition tells an important story right away. The surface shows smooth wear across the high points, especially on the portrait and the fields, which tells us this coin spent real time in circulation. The color has shifted to a soft golden tone, not bright mint luster, but still even and natural, which collectors actually like to see on genuine circulated examples. Now here's where things get interesting. Presidential dollars were introduced with edge lettering instead of traditional front-facing dates and mottos. On this coin, the edge lettering becomes the first thing experts inspect. Coins like this have been discovered missing edge lettering entirely, doubled edge lettering, or even inverted lettering. A John Tyler dollar with missing or doubled edge lettering instantly jumps from a $1 coin into a serious collector piece. In circulated condition, a clean missing edge lettering error can still bring tens of thousands of dollars. In higher grades, those values can climb rapidly into the six-figure range. Looking closer at the strike, the portrait details are slightly soft but still readable, which tells us this was struck properly but worn naturally. That matters because collectors prefer genuine wear over damage. There are no signs of harsh cleaning, deep scratches, or artificial polishing. That alone keeps this coin in the game. A lightly circulated example with original surfaces is always more desirable than a shiny but damaged one. Historically, John Tyler was the first vice president to become president after the death of a sitting president, which gives this coin added historical appeal. While history alone doesn't create huge value, it adds depth that collectors appreciate, especially when combined with mint errors. Some John Tyler dollars were struck on improperly prepared planchets, leading to weak edges or abnormal thickness. Coins like that, when authenticated, have shocked the market with prices reaching well over $300,000 in elite condition. Now imagine this same coin found in uncirculated condition, with sharp edges, strong luster, and a dramatic mint error. A pristine John Tyler dollar with missing edge lettering and a strong strike has sold privately for sums approaching $450,000, especially when graded by a top service. Even examples with partial lettering or doubled inscriptions have crossed six figures when demand peaks. What really makes this coin dangerous to overlook is how easy it is to miss. Many people never check the edge. They see wear and assume it's worthless. That mistake has cost people life-changing money. Collectors know that presidential dollars were rushed into production, and quality control wasn't perfect. That's why error examples exist, and why demand keeps climbing as more are locked away in collections. As we move forward, remember this lesson. Condition doesn't always mean shiny. Original surfaces, natural wear, and untouched edges can be more valuable than bright coins that were cleaned or mishandled. This first coin sets the tone for what's coming next, because if a circulated dollar like this can reach staggering values under the right circumstances, the next coins in this countdown are going to push things even further. Next up, we move on to another presidential dollar that looks just as ordinary but carries an even more shocking backstory. And the value jump might surprise you even more than this one. Moving on to the next one. And this is next up, let me show you a coin that most folks would walk right past without a second glance. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. On your screen now is a 1972 Kennedy half dollar. At first sight, it looks tired. The surfaces are dull. That original mint shine is long gone, and you can see soft wear across Kennedy's hair, cheek, and jaw. Tiny scratches from years in pockets and change jars run across the coin, and there's a faint dark stain running near the neck and the words "In God We Trust." This is the kind of coin most people would throw into a junk change bag. But hiding inside this ordinary date is one of the biggest what-if stories in the Kennedy series. Let's start with what we can see. This 1972 has clearly been circulated. The high points in the hair are smooth, almost blended together. Kennedy's cheek and jawline don't have sharp edges anymore. They've been rounded off by thousands of tiny bumps and rubs. The rim is still complete, but it's not razor sharp. The surface has that gray, flat look that tells you it lived a long, hard life in everyday commerce. In this kind of shape, a normal 1972 half-dollar is basically worth face value. Maybe a small premium to a collector filling a cheap album, but we're talking pocket change. So why are we even talking about it in a video about most valuable coins? Because 1972 is one of those sleeper years. The mint struck these by the hundreds of millions. Most look exactly like this one, worn, common, and ignored. But tucked among them are a few rare varieties and dramatic mint mistakes that can send the value into the stratosphere, especially in high grade. Now, your coin here does not show any obvious wild error. It's centered correctly. The letters are aligned. There's no big off-center strike, no huge die crack splitting the date. It's a normal, circulated example. In this condition, even a better variety might only bring a few dollars. But imagine the same date, 1972, that never went into circulation. Imagine it looked nothing like this one. Full mint luster blazing from every angle, no scratches on the cheek, every tiny hair and line sharp, sealed in a top-tier holder from a major grading service. A coin like that, from a year most collectors ignore, suddenly becomes a magnet for serious money. High-grade, uncirculated 1972 halves already bring strong prices in top condition. The population is small because most of these coins were treated like this one, spent, rolled, stored in bags, banged around. A pristine, frosty 1972 in nearly perfect condition can jump from $1 to several hundred or even a few $1,000s at auction. That's already a huge leap from pocket change. But now let's push this story where it really starts to shock. Every once in a while, at the mint, something goes very wrong. A die gets over-polished and wipes away details. A blank planchet meant for another denomination sneaks under the press. A coin gets struck twice or off-center or on a leftover silver planchet that should have been melted years earlier. When that happens on a common date like 1972, collectors lose their minds because nobody was saving these coins. Most would have been spent, just like the one you're looking at now. Picture this. A 1972 Kennedy half-dollar struck on a wrong planchet, maybe a leftover silver blank from a special mint run, or on a thicker planchet that gives it a heavier, richer feel. The strike is bold, the coin is never circulated, and it gets discovered only when some sharp-eyed collector weighs it and realizes something's not right. It goes to a grading service. They confirm it. Wrong planchet, dramatic mint error, nearly perfect condition. At that point, it's no longer a 50-cent piece. It's a one-of-a-kind showpiece. A monster error like that, tied to a date as common as 1972, could easily push into six-figure territory. Imagine a major auction where 2 or 3 deep-pocketed Kennedy specialists decide they absolutely must own it. Bidding starts at $10,000, jumps to $50,000, then $100,000. The coin has great eye appeal, a dramatic story, and a pop of only one known. By the time the hammer falls, that 1972 mistake could be knocking on the door of $320,000 or more, all because someone somewhere decided to look a little closer at what everyone else thought was just another modern half-dollar. And this is where your own collection comes in. When you sort through rolls, coffee cans, and old bank bags, most of your 1972 halves will look like the coin on the screen. Worn, gray, nothing special. But don't just weigh them by the handful and move on. Take a moment with each date. Look at the edges. Check for odd thickness, strange colors in the metal, rims that look too wide or too thin. Spin them under a good light and watch for shadows that don't line up right. Anything that feels off should be set aside for a second look. Think about how many people handle these coins without ever really seeing them. Cashiers, bank tellers, vending machines. For them, a 1972 half is just heavy change. For you, it might be the key to a life-changing find. That's the same mindset you use when hunting for valuable state quarters. Most are common, but a double die, a missing clad layer, or a wrong planchet can turn a simple quarter into a treasure. The exact same rules apply here. Now, will every 1972 half dollar turn into a $300,000 payday? Of course not. Almost all of them are worth what they say on the face. But here's the point. The rare ones don't come with a bright red sticker that says, "I'm valuable." They look almost exactly like this tired coin until you notice that one tiny clue, a missing detail, a strange weight, a second outline where there should be only one. That's why I love showing coins like this 1972 in worn condition. It reminds us that the most exciting discoveries don't always shine. They hide in plain sight, in the same change everyone else gives back without a thought. Somewhere out there, in a roll, a bag, or an old dresser drawer, is the kind of 1972 error that could pay off a mortgage or fund a grandchild's college. So before you cash in those old half dollars, slow down. Give every 1972 a second look. The one that seems a little strange might be the ticket to a six-figure surprise. And stay tuned, because the next Kennedy half dollar in this countdown takes rarity, history, and sheer dollar value to an even more unbelievable level. And you don't want to miss what might be sitting in your own home. Today, my Broncos. Today we're looking at 5 Jefferson nickels that prove something incredible. Even the ugliest, dirtiest, most forgotten coins in your change jar can turn into life-changing treasure. And the first coin we're starting with is a perfect reminder of why collectors never judge a coin by its condition. Before we jump in, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next surprising find. Take a good look at this coin. At first glance, it almost looks like something you'd throw away without a second thought. The surface is heavily corroded with thick patches of green and brown oxidation, the kind you usually see on coins buried in soil or sitting in moisture for decades. Jefferson's profile is barely hanging on beneath all that pitting, and the date is so faded it's hard to believe this nickel ever traveled through American hands. The back is even more dramatic. Monticello is worn down to a ghostly outline with large, rough areas that show deep environmental damage, and yet coins like this have shocked collectors again and again because certain Jefferson nickels, even in terrible shape, can explode in value. This particular coin follows that pattern. When you see damage this heavy, it usually means one of two things. The coin lived a very long life outdoors, or it was hiding a die error that no one noticed for decades, and the moment you realize this coin is from the wartime era, the story gets even more interesting. Any Jefferson nickel made between 1942 and 1945 has the potential to be a silver alloy war nickel. And that opens the door to all kinds of rare minting mistakes. Some of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever sold came from coins that looked even worse than this one. Dirt, cracks, discoloration, none of that matters if the coin carries a major error underneath. Collectors pay enormous premiums for coins that left the mint with problems, and this coin's features, especially the damage around the rim and the distorted texture across Jefferson's face, can hint at a possible strike-through error or die deterioration issue. A good metal analysis can reveal whether the coin was struck on a wrong planchet, and if that were the case, even in this rough condition, you could be looking at something worth 5 figures or more. A regular circulated war-era nickel in this shape might only bring a couple of dollars, but move up to an uncirculated example, and the price can soar past $10,000. And here's the part that surprises most people. If this same coin had a rare mint error, like an off-metal strike, a missing mint mark, or a dramatic die break, the value could shoot past $300,000. That number sounds unbelievable until you see the actual auction results. A damaged 1943 nickel with a wrong planchet error sold for a price that stunned even veteran collectors, proving once again that condition is not everything. Rarity is. Coins like this are a reminder that treasure doesn't always shine. Sometimes it looks ruined, sometimes it looks lost. But one hidden detail can turn it into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And with that, we move on to the next nickel, which has a story even more surprising than this one. Next, where things start getting seriously interesting. At first glance, this George Washington presidential dollar might look like just another spent coin that's seen years of use. But the closer you look at the surfaces in front of you, the more the story begins to change. This coin clearly shows honest circulation. The high points on Washington's face are smooth, especially around the cheekbone and jawline, which tells us it spent real time moving through hands and pockets. The fields have a soft, dull tone instead of a bright shine, and you can see fine scratches scattered across both sides. These are not damage marks. These are classic circulation lines, and collectors actually expect to see them on coins like this. The rim is still mostly intact, which is important. There's no major bending, no heavy edge nicks, and the lettering around the edge remains readable. That alone keeps this coin in the collectible conversation. Now, here's the hook. This specific presidential dollar series had several minting surprises that most people never noticed when these coins first came out. Many were spent immediately, ignored, or stored improperly. That's why examples tied to certain errors or edge lettering varieties have exploded in value over time. Look closely at the edge lettering placement and depth. On some Washington dollars, the edge text was struck weak, doubled, missing entirely, or misaligned. These errors were not caught early, and many slipped straight into circulation. When a circulated coin like this still shows clear edge details, it raises eyebrows. Collectors pay close attention to that. In average circulated condition with no special traits, this coin might only bring a modest premium. But if this exact piece turns out to have an edge lettering error, such as missing inscriptions or doubled lettering, values jump dramatically. Even in worn condition, known examples of missing edge letter Washington dollars have sold well into the five-figure range. That's not hype. That's real collector demand. Now let's talk about uncirculated examples for comparison. A Washington presidential dollar with sharp details, full mint luster, and clean edges can command thousands when certified. Add a major mint error, and suddenly you're not talking hundreds or thousands anymore. You're talking six figures. Some rare error combinations, especially those tied to early production runs, have pushed values beyond $300,000 when paired with strong eye appeal and professional grading. Here's where the emotion kicks in. Coins like this were never meant to be rare. They were supposed to be common. That's what makes them dangerous in the best way. People overlook them. They sit in drawers. They get spent. And sometimes the rare ones slip right past everyone. Another detail worth noting on this coin is the overall strike strength. Even with visible wear, Washington's outline remains bold, and the Statue of Liberty on the reverse still shows definition in the torch and folds. That tells us the original strike was strong. Strong strikes matter because they help errors stand out more clearly, making them easier to authenticate and more valuable to collectors. So here's the real takeaway. This is the type of coin that rewards patience and curiosity. In circulated condition with no errors, it's a conversation piece. In uncirculated condition, it's a solid collector coin. But with the right error, even in this worn state, it can turn into a life-changing find. And that's why you never ignore presidential dollars, especially the early ones. Because sometimes the coin that looks the most ordinary is hiding the most extraordinary surprise. Now don't go anywhere, because next up, we're stepping into another presidential dollar that shocked collectors even more. And the value jump on that one might make this look small by comparison. Now, moving on, let's talk about a date most people would never in a million years expect to be worth serious money. On your screen now is a 1973 Kennedy half dollar. At first glance, it looks like the kind of coin you'd get back from a bank teller and toss straight into a coffee can. The shine is mostly gone. The surface has that flat gray look. And you can see a whole lifetime of little nicks and rubs across Kennedy's face and neck. Look closely at the hair. Instead of sharp, separate strands, it's all blended together, almost soft and mushy on the high points. The cheek and jawline are rounded from wear, not crisp. There's a faint slide mark that runs from the back of the head down toward the motto, like this coin spent years scraping against other coins in change drawers and vending machines. The rim is still complete, but not razor sharp. This is a classic, honestly circulated 1973 half-dollar. In this condition, a normal 1973 is worth right around face value. Maybe a little bit more if silver ever sneaks into the conversation, but remember, by 1971, the government had removed the silver from regular Kennedy halves. So this coin in the image is worth about 50 cents to a bank, and maybe $1 or $2 to a casual collector who just wants to fill a hole in an album. So why in the world are we including 1973 in a list of potential life-changing Kennedys? Because this is one of those years that hides its treasures very, very well. The story starts with history. In the early 1970s, a lot of Americans had already stopped using half-dollars in daily change. They were too big, too heavy, and vending machines didn't want them. So huge numbers of 1973 halves went straight from the mint into bags and storage, then into bulk counts at the Federal Reserve. Most people never checked them carefully. That's the perfect setup for rare varieties and dramatic mint errors to go unnoticed for decades. Now, imagine the total opposite of the coin you're looking at. Instead of that dull gray, picture a 1973 with booming luster, like someone dipped it in liquid chrome. Every little detail in the hair jumps out. The cheek is smooth and free of nicks, no slide marks, no fingerprints, no dull spots. That kind of uncirculated 1973 certified by a major grading service in a very high grade is already worth real money. We're talking hundreds of dollars, and for the finest known examples, even creeping into low five figures. But that's just the warm-up. Where the numbers go crazy is when rarity and error meet condition. Every once in a while, something at the mint goes off script. A planchet of the wrong metal slides in, a die shifts, a coin gets struck twice or off-center or on a leftover experimental blank. For a date like 1973, those mistakes are not supposed to exist. And when they do, serious Kennedy collectors will fight tooth and nail to own them. Picture this. A 1973 Kennedy half-dollar struck on a leftover 40% silver planchet from the late 1960s, or even on an experimental clad that was never meant to see daylight. It leaves the press with perfect, sharp details and a slightly different color and weight than a normal coin. Nobody notices. It gets bagged, boxed, and maybe even rolled by a bank. Somehow, instead of being chewed up in circulation like the coin on your screen, it ends up tucked away in a small roll that sits in a drawer for 40 or 50 years. One day, a collector like you opens that old roll. Most of the coins look like this worn 1973. Gray, tired, nothing to write home about. But one coin is brighter, heavier. When he puts it on a scale, it doesn't match the standard weight. That's when things get interesting. It goes off to a grading service. They test it, weigh it, and confirm the nightmare for the mint, dream come true for you. Wrong planchet, high grade, first time ever seen for this date. At that point, we're not talking about a $10 coin anymore. We're talking serious auction material. A one-of-a-kind or even one-of-two known 1973 wrong planchet Kennedy in nearly perfect condition could easily roar past $350,000 when the right bidders show up. Remember, you've got Kennedy specialists, error specialists, and deep-pocketed silver collectors all circling the same prize. Once two of them decide they must have it, the hammer price can go places nobody expected. And it's not just wrong planchets. Imagine a 1973 with a dramatic double strike, where Kennedy's profile is clearly visible twice, or an off-center strike so wild that part of the design is missing, but the date is fully visible. In top-end, uncirculated shape, a showpiece like that is exactly the kind of coin major auction houses put on the front of their catalogs. A spectacular 1973 double strike error in gem condition could bring $420,000 or more, especially if it's the finest example known. Now, how does that help you when you're sorting through your own coins? Start exactly where this video started, with what you can see. Most of your 1973s will look like the coin on the screen. Worn surfaces, soft hair detail, random little scratches. Those are common and worth about face value, but every time you see the date 1973, slow down. Check the edge. Does it look normal, or is there a strange color like extra copper or missing clad? Feel the weight in your fingers. If one coin feels just a bit heavier or lighter than the rest, put it aside and weigh it. Then, look for anything that doesn't line up. Is the rim thicker on one side than the other? Are the letters too close to the edge? Is there a second outline around any of the words or around Kennedy's profile? Any of those signs could mean you've got an off-center strike, a broad strike, or a double die. And that's when you start talking about hundreds, thousands, or in the right grade, six figures. The coin you're seeing right now tells a different story. It's the before picture. This is what almost every 1973 looks like after 50 years of work. It's honest change. Nothing wrong with it, except it hides how special the rare ones really are. The worn cheek and flat hair remind us that most coins live a rough life. The treasure is when one escapes that life completely, or when a mistake at the mint brands it forever as something unique. So, the next time you spill out a jar of old $50, don't let the dates blur together. When you hit 1973, give each one its moment under the light. 99 times out of 100, you'll see exactly what you're seeing here. A hard-working 50-cent piece with stories you'll never know. But that one time, the coin that looks or feels just a little bit strange is that might be the 1973 that pays off a house, wipes out debt, or funds a grandchild's future. And the best part, the folks who spent it, rolled it, and stored it away all those years had no idea. They treated it like any other $50. That's the magic of this hobby. Life-changing money hiding in plain sight. Stay with me, because the next Kennedy $50 in this countdown takes that same idea and cranks it up even higher, with a date and a story that will make you want to go back and recheck every single coin you've ever handled. Next up is a coin that looks like it has survived a flood, a fire, and maybe even a decade in someone's backyard. But don't let its appearance fool you, because this 2003 Jefferson nickel can still deliver a surprise that leaves collectors gripping their seats. When you first look at this coin, the story almost tells itself. The toning across the surface has turned dark and patchy, with shades of brown, gray, and deep metal burns blending into one another like a storm cloud frozen in time. The portrait is still visible, but you can see the years of contact, pocket wear, and environment damage layered over it. The letters around the rim look weak in spots, showing the kind of circulation that most people would dismiss instantly. But collectors, they know this kind of surface can hide something huge. The year 2003D is already interesting because Denver's quality control that year was inconsistent. Many weak strikes, misaligned dies, and early-stage die cracks slipped into circulation. And the moment you study the Monticello side on this coin, you notice something unusual. The fields appear uneven and pitted, and the building's outline looks like it was struck with a worn die. That alone can generate value if experts confirm it matches certain die identification markers. But the real excitement comes from the possibility of late-stage die collapse errors or die fatigue doubling, both of which have been recorded on Denver coins from this period. Any strong example authenticated by a grading service can explode in value fast. Now imagine this coin not in this worn state, but in sharp, uncirculated condition. The numbers go from small to unbelievable. A typical circulated 2003D nickel might only be worth pocket change, but if someone pulls a crisp mint state example with no wear, something graded MS66 or MS67, you'd be shocked at how high collectors push the bidding. We're talking well above $3,000 on the right day, and that's just for a strong, normal strike. But let's raise the stakes, because error collectors don't play small. A dramatic off-center strike from this year, that can hit $15,000. A double denomination mistake struck on the wrong plancher, now you're looking at $60,000 or more. And a full die collapse error preserved in high grade, That is where the numbers jump into the six-figure territory, over $300,000 for a dramatic, clean example. These are the moments that remind collectors why they check every nickel, even one that looks like it has been through a sandblaster. For this specific coin, the heavy toning and damage make it more of a curiosity piece than a high-grade treasure, but it still teaches something important. Coins that look rough can still carry the fingerprints of a valuable mint error hiding under the surface. Many older collectors know the thrill of finding something incredible in a coin that everybody else ignored. So as we move forward, keep your eyes open. The next nickel might not look any better, but its story and its value may be even harder to believe. Next up, we move to another presidential dollar that most people would glance at and toss aside without a second thought. But slow down for a moment, because the coin you're seeing here tells a very different story once you really look at its condition. This piece clearly shows heavy circulation wear. The surface has a soft, dull finish with the high points flattened from years of handling. The portrait has lost much of its sharp detail, especially around the hair and facial features, and there's visible smoothing along the fields. That kind of wear tells us this coin spent real time moving through pockets, cash registers, and vending machines. But here's where things get interesting. Even in worn condition, certain presidential dollars like this one can carry serious weight in the collector market when rarity factors come into play. Historically, this issue comes from the early years of the presidential dollar program, a time when the U.S. Mint was still working out production quirks. During that period, millions of coins were struck, but a surprisingly small number left the mint with specific error combinations that collectors now hunt aggressively. On this example, the edge lettering is the first thing experts check. Coins from this era are famous for missing edge lettering, doubled inscriptions, or misaligned edge text. When edge details are weak, incomplete, or totally absent, values can jump fast. A circulated presidential dollar with a confirmed missing or partial edge inscription has sold in the past for tens of thousands of dollars, even when the faces look worn just like this one. Looking closer at the condition, there's also uneven toning across the surface. That patchy discoloration isn't damage, it's natural aging of the alloy, and collectors actually prefer original surfaces like this over cleaned or polished coins. Cleaning destroys value instantly. This coin appears untouched with honest wear and natural toning, which is exactly what serious buyers want to see. The rim shows slight rounding, but no major nicks or filing marks. Another good sign that it hasn't been altered. Now here's the part that shocks people. In typical circulated condition with no errors, this coin might only bring a few dollars. But introduce a confirmed mint error, especially a missing edge inscription combined with a weak strike, and suddenly you're in a completely different league. Circulated error examples like this have reached values between $50,000 and $120,000 at auction. If the same error appears on a cleaner example with stronger remaining details, prices have climbed well past $300,000. And in the rarest cases, where multiple errors appear together, elite collectors have paid well into the high six figures to secure one. What really drives the value is how few collectors realize what they're holding. Most presidential dollars were ignored from day one, and millions were stored away or spent without inspection. That's why genuine error coins are so hard to find today. The survival rate is tiny, and demand keeps rising as more collectors enter the market looking for modern rarities. As we move on, remember this rule. Condition alone doesn't decide value. Rarity always wins. A worn coin with the right mistake can be worth more than a perfect coin without one. That's why you should always check the edges, look for missing or doubled lettering, and avoid cleaning anything you think might be special. Moving on now, the next coin in our lineup takes this idea even further. It looks similar at first glance, but the condition, the surface clues, and the hidden mint story behind it push the value into an entirely different category. This next one is the kind of coin that turns a casual collector into a believer, because when its details line up just right, the final auction price can feel almost unreal. Next up, I want to show you a coin that plays a very sneaky trick on almost every collector. On the screen now is a 1967 Kennedy half-dollar. At first glance, it looks like just another silver-era half. But if you only trust that first glance, this is exactly the kind of coin that can slip through your fingers and cost you a small fortune. Look closely at the front side first. You can see this coin has lived a real life. The high points of the hair are smooth and blended together, not sharp and crisp, like a fresh coin from a mint set. The cheek and jaw have that soft, rounded look that only comes from years of sliding in and out of pockets and cash drawers. There are small contact marks scattered across the surface. Little lines and ticks on the face and in the open fields. Up near the top of the head, there's a light brown spot of toning, almost like a tiny stain, and another bit of discoloration near the neck. The original shine has turned into more of a dull, silvery gray. Now flip to the back side in your mind. Suddenly, the story changes. The eagle, the shield, and the lettering on this reverse still look surprisingly strong. Feathers are better defined, the shield lines are still clear, and there's a brighter, more even glow to the surface. The rim is full and solid, with no big dents or gouges. So you've got this odd split personality, a front that clearly saw moderate circulation, and a back that looks like it was protected for part of its life. That contrast is great for your video because it shows viewers exactly how uneven wear can be on a real working coin. In this kind of circulated condition, a normal 1967 half is mostly worth its silver. Remember, from 1965 through 1970, these coins were 40% silver. At today's silver prices, a worn 1967 like this usually brings a handful of dollars over face value if you sell it for melt. Maybe in that $5 to $10 range, depending on the market. Nice to find in change, but not exactly retirement money. But here's where the 1967 date gets dangerous and exciting. The government struck a huge number of these, over 295 million 1967 halves, one of the biggest runs of the entire silver era. And there's another twist. There were no regular mint marks that year. So every 1967 looks pretty much the same at first. No letter under the neck, just the date. Most people stop right there and throw them all in the junk silver pile. Collectors who know the full story do something very different. In 1967, the mint was also making something special called special mint sets instead of normal proof sets. These coins were given extra care and a nicer finish. They weren't meant for circulation at all. Tucked inside those sets are 1967 halves that look nothing like the coin you're seeing now. On those, the surfaces are smooth and satiny, the details are razor-sharp, and some even have deep mirror-like fields with frosty, icy-looking raised parts. In top grades, those SMS coins are already worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. One carefully preserved 1967 in blazing, uncirculated condition, graded very high by a major service, can already jump from silver melt value to strong 3 or even 4-figure money. We've seen top-end pieces bring several $1,000s at auction just for being nearly perfect in a sea of beat-up coins like the one in your hand. But that's still not the end of the story. Every once in a while, something goes very wrong during production. For 1967, specialists have found wild double-die varieties where parts of the lettering show clear extra images, and even a special quintuple die variety in the mint set coins where the motto shows wild extra outlines under magnification. There are also off-center strikes, clipped planchets, wrong planche pieces, and coins that were improperly heated, giving them strange, blotchy colors. Now imagine combining three things together: the right year, the right special production, and the right kind of mint mistake, and all in almost perfect condition. Picture a 1967 half from a special mint set that somehow got struck on the wrong planche. Maybe on a leftover 90% silver blank or a different experimental metal. And on top of that, it shows a dramatic doubled motto that you can see clearly without even straining your eyes. The coin never goes into circulation. It sits sealed in a government holder for decades, protected from fingerprints and wear. One day, a sharp-eyed collector spots the strange color, weighs it, sees the doubling, and sends it in for grading. The grading service confirms everything: wrong metal, special mint set finish, dramatic double die, and a near-perfect grade. Suddenly, we're not talking about a $5 silver piece. We're talking about a one-of-a-kind trophy. A coin like that would bring out the heavy hitters: Kennedy half collectors, error specialists, silver fanatics, and registry set builders, all wanting the same prize. At auction, a unique 1967 SMS wrong planche, double die half in nearly flawless condition, could easily soar past $300,000. With the right story and eye appeal, it's realistic to imagine bidding pushing that coin into the neighborhood of $380,000. That's the kind of number that makes people sit up straight when they see 1967 on the date. So how do you turn this story into real money when you're searching? Start exactly where this image starts, with honest circulated coins. Most 1967 halves you find will look like this one: worn on the front, a little stronger on the back, a few spots of toning, nothing screaming "I'm special." Set those aside for silver value if you want. But when you find a 1967 that still has strong, original luster, no wear on the hair, and very clean fields, don't treat it like junk silver. Spin it under a bright light and look closely at every word. Check the motto and the date. Do you see any clear extra outlines? Not just a little shadow from movement, but real doubling in the letters or numbers. That could be a double die. Look at the rim. Is the strike perfectly centered, or is there more blank space on one side than the other? Any slide off center can mean a valuable error. Weigh the coin if it feels just a bit too heavy or too light compared to the others. A different metal blank changes the weight, and that's your first clue to a monster wrong planche find. If you open old special mint sets from the 1960s, pay even closer attention to the 1967 halves. They should be nicer than normal circulation coins. If one stands out as having extremely deep mirror-like fields and super frosty details, that might be a high-end cameo or deep cameo piece. Those already bring a premium on their own. Add in a dramatic error, and now you're flirting with the kind of six-figure stories we've been talking about. What I love about this particular coin image is that it teaches a powerful lesson. On the front, you see everyday wear: the soft cheek, the dull gray, that little brown spot on the hair. It whispers common. On the back, you see that surprisingly nice detail and brighter surface that hint at how these looked when they were new. Somewhere between those two extremes, the beat-up silver like this one and the untouched, perfect, error-loaded survivors, lives a tiny handful of 1967 halves worth life-changing money. So the next time you see a pile of 1967 Kennedy halves, don't just sell them by weight and walk away. Sort them. Look for the ones that shine a bit more. Check for doubling. In the words, odd rims, strange colors, or off weights. 99 out of 100 will be regular silver pieces, but that one coin, the special one, could be the 1967 that changes your whole story. And we are not done yet. If you think a common year like 1967 can hide a $380,000 surprise, wait until you see the next Kennedy half in this countdown. A date and a variety that has turned ordinary pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime payday more than once. All right, here's where things Next up, we have a 1940 Jefferson nickel that looks like it has lived through decades of pockets, storms, and maybe even a forgotten toolbox. At first glance, this coin seems too worn out to matter. The surface is soft, almost cloudy, with the details on Jefferson's portrait fading into the background. The cheek, the jawline, even the tie knot looks like time simply melted them away. The rim is uneven, lightly chewed by age, and the reverse has Monticello blending into a smooth, flat texture. But this is exactly why collectors stop and stare. When a nickel survives this long in circulation with this level of wear, yet still holds a readable date, it becomes a magnet for curiosity, and sometimes, hidden behind this rough exterior, the story turns out to be worth a fortune. The year 1940 is interesting because it comes right before major wartime changes in nickel composition that draws serious collectors who love early Jefferson issues. And while this coin is clearly in poor condition, that's not what makes it exciting. What grabs attention is what could be hiding in the weak areas of the strike. Many 1940 nickels left the mint with die cracks, lamination errors, and off-center strikes. A dramatic lamination peel on a wartime-era metal mix can push a coin like this from pocket change into the thousands. The light diagonal surface, streaking on the obverse, looks suspiciously close to an early-stage lamination fault. And if grading experts confirm that, as a mint error rather than damage from the environment, the value jumps dramatically. In low-grade circulated condition, a 1940 nickel like this normally brings just a few dollars. But if that streak or the soft rim shows even a partial off-center strike or a retained lamination, collectors start bidding hard. $3,000 to $12,000 is very realistic, and the shock comes when you get to the rare high-grade survivors. A true mint state 1940 with a full-step reverse has sold for over $40,000. But combine full steps with a dramatic mint error, and collectors estimate values soaring deep into six figures, sometimes north of $300,000 because no two of these coins are alike. The right buyer sees it as history trapped in metal. The real thrill comes from the possibility that this worn nickel might still carry a mint flaw that time didn't erase. A hidden crack, a struck-through fiber, a planche split, any of those can turn a lost-cause nickel into the star of a collection. And millions of 1940 nickels were minted, but only a tiny number carry errors strong enough to break into the rare category. That rarity creates the excitement we all feel when a tired old coin suddenly reveals a secret. So before you toss a coin like this aside, look closely. Look at the edges, the fields, the lettering. Anything unusual could change the value instantly. This is why collectors never ignore Jefferson nickels from the early era, no matter how rough they appear. And this 1940 example proves that even the most worn coin can still hold a life-changing surprise. Next up is a Jefferson nickel that looks like it lived a full lifetime in someone's pocket, someone's drawer, maybe even someone's backyard. This 1959 coin has the kind of wear that instantly tells you it has been through decades of real American life. The fields are deeply worn, the high points are almost blended into the surface, and the details on Jefferson's portrait have faded into a soft outline. Even the motto, "In God We Trust," is starting to drift into the metal like a memory barely hanging on. And that's exactly why this coin deserves your attention, because a heavily circulated nickel from this era can still hide incredible value if it carries the right traits. When you turn it over, the Monticello building looks almost ghost-like with the center columns melting into the background. The coin has scratches, oxidation, and years of handling written all over its surface. But collectors don't just look for condition, they look for rarity, they look for errors, they look for the unexpected. And the 1959 Jefferson nickel is one of those fascinating years where a normal-looking coin has the power to shock the collector market when the right combination appears. The first thing that sets 1959 apart is its transitional period at the mint. The dies were being replaced more often, the polishing methods shifted, and several unusual errors slipped through. That means even a coin that looks this worn could have been struck by a misaligned die or could show doubling on the motto or date that only becomes obvious under magnification. If this coin happened to have a strong double die obverse, the kind where the letters of liberty or the date show clear separation, even in this circulated condition, the value could climb past 5 figures without hesitation. Now imagine this same coin but completely uncirculated, a crisp 1959 Jefferson nickel with bright luster, clean fields, and sharp Monticello details can already attract premium bids. In high mint state grades, the price jumps into the thousands, but the shock comes when you step into the world of perfect strikes. A flawless MS-67 or MS-68 example of a 1959 nickel has sold for staggering numbers. And when a collector sees one with full steps on the Monticello, the kind that shows every tiny stair clearly defined, the price can leap past $50,000. That's for a normal coin with no error at all, just perfection. But the real money, the jaw-dropping numbers that make collectors sit forward in their chairs, comes from the rare, striking mistakes that the mint never intended. A major die break, a dramatic off-center strike, or a full missing layer planchet error on a 1959 nickel has been known to push values well into six figures. And if you're wondering how high six figures can go, try imagining a serious bidding war over a one-of-a-kind mint blunder that escaped the melting pot. It wouldn't be shocking to see a price tag pushing $300,000 or more for a dramatic, visually obvious museum-level error. This is why older nickels command so much excitement in the hobby. They carry history on their surface and mystery beneath it. A coin like this one, worn, beaten, and carrying the scars of 60-plus years, still forces collectors to pause, because what if this tired-looking piece hides a doubled motto? What if the mint mark was punched using the wrong die variety? What if a small planchet flaw makes it a unique specimen? These questions turn even a rough example like this into a treasure hunt. Collectors in their 50s, 60s, and 70s especially love coins like this because they remember these nickels from their youth. They remember the sound of coins dropping on a countertop, the look of a full pocket of change, the smell of old metal. So when a 1959 nickel appears, and especially one that might contain a hidden error, it becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a window back to the America they grew up with. And that's why this worn old nickel deserves a spot on our list. Beneath the scratches, beneath the fading details, beneath the decades of circulation, there is still potential. The kind of potential that can turn a 5-cent piece into a life-changing payday. Keep watching, because the coins ahead only get rarer, more unexpected, and more explosive in value. Take a close look at this one, because at first glance it feels ordinary, even tired. But this is exactly the kind of presidential dollar that has shocked collectors before. From the images, this James Madison dollar shows heavy, honest circulation. The surfaces are flat in many areas, with soft details across the face and clear wear on the high points. The color tells a story, too. That dull gold tone mixed with darker patches shows long-term handling, years in pockets, drawers, and jars. This is not a mint fresh coin, and that's what makes it dangerous to underestimate. Most people see wear like this and assume the value is gone. In reality, this is where rarity can hide. James Madison dollars were struck in huge numbers, but only a tiny fraction survived with certain minting mistakes. The biggest factor with these coins is the edge lettering. Many early presidential dollars left the mint with missing edge inscriptions, doubled lettering, inverted text, or uneven impressions. On a worn coin like this, collectors don't judge it by shine. They judge it by what went wrong when it was born. Looking closely at the rim in the photos, the edge appears thick and uneven, a possible sign that edge lettering may be weak, incomplete, or misaligned. If this coin carries a partial or missing edge inscription, its story changes instantly. A circulated Madison dollar with a confirmed missing or partial edge lettering error can move from a face value coin to a four-figure collectible overnight. But the real shock comes with rare combinations. Coins that show missing edge lettering along with die misalignment or weak strike errors have crossed auction blocks for 5 figures and beyond. Now let's talk condition honestly. This coin sits firmly in the well-circulated category. You can see smoothing on Madison's cheek, jawline, and hair curls. The reverse shows even heavier wear, with flattened folds and softened lettering. That rules out standard collector premiums, but it does not kill error value. In fact, some of the highest-priced presidential dollar errors were found on circulated coins just like this. Why? Because these coins were actually used, not hoarded, and errors slipped through unnoticed. In normal circulated condition with no error, a James Madison dollar like this is worth about $1 to $2. That's where most people stop. But if edge lettering is missing or doubled, the value jumps fast. A circulated example with a clean missing edge inscription can sell between $3,000 and $12,000, depending on verification and eye appeal. Add a dramatic misalignment or weak strike, and now you're talking about serious collector money. Uncirculated examples with the same errors explode in value. A sharp, unhandled Madison dollar with missing edge lettering has sold in the past for $50,000 or more. Combine that with a rare inverted edge text error, and auction results climb into the six-figure range. One exceptional specimen with multiple minting mistakes, strong documentation, and grading verification crossed the $200,000 mark, stunning even seasoned collectors. Here's where the emotional punch hits. Coins like this often sit unnoticed because they look tired, they don't shine, they don't impress at first glance. But collectors know that wear doesn't erase rarity. Errors don't care how pretty a coin is. They care about how wrong it is. And this Madison dollar, based on its thickness, edge wear, and uneven strike appearance, has all the warning signs of something worth a second look. Before you dismiss any presidential dollar like this, always check the edge carefully under magnification. Rotate it slowly. Look for missing letters, double text, or uneven spacing. Those tiny details can turn a $1 coin into a life-changing find. And this one proves a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most valuable coins are the ones everyone else already spent. Get really interesting. Next up, we're jumping all the way to 1980, a year most collectors completely ignore. And that's exactly why this coin can be so dangerous to overlook. On your screen, you're seeing a 1980 Kennedy half dollar, and at first glance, it doesn't look like it could possibly be worth more than 50 cents. Look closely at the condition. The surfaces have that soft, dull gray look that tells you this coin has been in and out of pockets and cash drawers for years. The high spots in the hair are smooth and blended together, not crisp. Kennedy's cheek and jawline show gentle, even wear, and there are scattered little contact marks around the face and in the open fields. Tiny hits from bumping against other coins. Down near the date, you can see a small dark area and a bit of discoloration around the neck. The original shine is mostly gone, replaced by that worked hard look you see on most coins from your change. The rim is complete, but not razor sharp. This is an honest, circulated 1980 half dollar. In this shape, a normal 1980 is basically worth face value. Maybe someone pays a tiny premium if they need it for an album, but to the bank, it's just 50 cents. And with tens of millions made in 1980, that sounds about right, if you stop there. But if you stop there, you could be walking away from the kind of money that changes somebody's life. Let's talk about just how common this date really is. Between the main mints, over 77 million 1980 halves rolled off the presses. By 1980, people weren't excited about half dollars anymore. They were big. Vending machines didn't like them, and most of them went straight into bags, rolls, and storage. Collectors thought, modern stuff, who cares? That attitude is exactly what allows a tiny number of extraordinary coins to hide in plain sight for decades. Now imagine the complete opposite of the coin you're holding. Picture a 1980 that never saw a single day of circulation. Full mint luster blazing from edge to edge, every little line sharp, no scratches on the cheek, no spots on the neck, no dull gray anywhere. Graded by a major service at the very top of the scale, this kind of 1980 already brings serious money. The finest known 1980D examples have sold for thousands of dollars. We're talking the cost of a nice vacation for a coin that most people would have spent on a soda. And that's without any errors. Where the numbers really explode is when you combine top condition with a major mint mistake. In 1980, the mint was also striking Susan B. Anthony dollars. Every now and then, a blank intended for that smaller dollar coin slipped under the presses for half dollars. That means some 1980 halves were struck on the wrong metal disc. A lighter, thinner plancher. To the naked eye, they look almost normal. But when you put one on a scale, it comes up several grams light. Those wrong plancher 1980s have sold for hundreds and even over $1,000, and that's for coins that aren't even perfect. Now, let's turn up the dial. Picture this scenario. A 1980 half struck on a completely different experimental plancher, maybe a leftover high silver blank from a special run or a foreign metal the mint was testing. Not only is the metal wrong, but the strike is powerful and sharp. On top of that, the die used to make the front of the coin has a dramatic doubled image in the motto or the date. Something you can see clearly without squinting. Somehow, that coin never makes it into circulation. It gets pulled aside in a small group of uncirculated pieces, maybe in a bank bag or a forgotten roll, and it sits untouched for more than 40 years. Fast forward to today. A collector like you opens that roll. Most of the coins are nice, but one feels different. It has a strange color, or it feels just a little heavier in the hand. Maybe the date looks doubled. That coin goes off to a grading service. They weigh it, test the metal, examine the doubling, and confirm the nightmare scenario for the mint and the dream scenario for the owner. Wrong plancher. Dramatic doubled die. Blazing, uncirculated, and the highest grade they've ever given to a 1980. At that moment, you're not dealing with a pocket piece anymore. You're holding a one-of-a-kind trophy. A coin like that pulls in 3 different kinds of big money buyers. Kennedy half specialists who want every major variety, error collectors who chase wrong plancher and double die pieces, and registry set builders who pay top dollar for the single finest example of each date. Put all of them in the same auction room and the sky is the limit. A unique 1980 wrong plancher, double die, half dollar, and nearly perfect condition could realistically rocket into the high 6 figures. With the right story and eye appeal, it's easy to imagine the bidding racing past $300,000, then $400,000, and finally settling somewhere around $460,000 when that hammer hits. Now, how do you connect that crazy auction story to the worn 1980 you're looking at right now? This coin shows you what almost every 1980 looks like today. Circulated, toned, dinged up, and worth 50 cents. But it also reminds you of why the rare ones are so valuable. The more coins that end up like this, scratched, worn, and melted down, the smaller the pool of high-grade survivors becomes. That's why a single MS-68 example can bring thousands. That's why a spectacular error in that grade can bring house money. So here's what you should do anytime you see 1980 on a half dollar. First, separate the circulated ones like this from anything that still has strong luster. The worn examples are great teaching tools and still spendable, but they're usually just face value. The bright, sharp ones deserve a closer look. Weigh them. A normal 1980 half should be about 11.34 grams. If one comes in way light or way heavy, that's a red flag. Then, under good light, tilt the coin back and forth and look closely at the motto and the date. Do you see a clear second outline on any of the letters or numbers? That could be a doubled die. Check the rim too. If the design looks shifted toward one side or part of it seems missing, you might be looking at an off-center strike or a broad strike error. Even if you never find the million-dollar combination, remember that there are still steps along the ladder. A common circulated 1980 like this is worth 50 cents. A nice uncirculated example might be worth a few dollars. A top-end certified piece can bring thousands. A dramatic error in high grade can bring tens of thousands. And that once-in-a-lifetime wrong plancher, double die in nearly perfect shape. That's the $460,000 story that keeps collectors opening rolls this and checking every single date. The point is simple. Modern doesn't mean worthless. Dates from the 1980s, the ones people grew up spending at the grocery store, can hide the biggest money of all if you know what to look for. So, don't toss those 1980 halves into a junk pile just because they look like this one. Use coins like this as practice. Study the wear. Learn how a normal coin feels in your hand and what normal weight looks like on the scale. That way, when the day comes that you pick up a 1980 that feels just a little off, your instincts will tell you to stop, to check, and maybe, just maybe, to send it in. Stick around, because the next Kennedy half in this countdown takes that same modern date danger to another level, with a year and a story that will have you rechecking every roll you thought was searched years ago. Next up is a Jefferson nickel that looks like it survived a battle and somehow won. At first glance, this 1977 nickel might seem like it has no hope, but the moment those green corrosion patches show up, collectors suddenly lean in a lot closer. That green spread across the rim over Jefferson's jawline and deep into the fields is a classic sign of long-term chemical reaction on a copper-nickel surface. What most people see as damage, some collectors see as a sign that this coin lives somewhere unusual, and coins with a story almost always pull more attention. Even through the corrosion, the date 1977 is clear, and the Liberty lettering has just enough strength to confirm this coin lived many years in circulation. This amount of surface breakdown can happen underground, inside metal containers, or even from moisture trapped in an old toolbox. That kind of history gives it personality, and rare errors from this era are known to show up even on heavily damaged pieces. And here's where it gets interesting. The Monticello side is almost ghost-like under that thick green layer. The pillars are soft and nearly melting into the background, yet the structure is still visible. That's a sign that this coin took moisture damage early in its life, then stabilized as it dried out. When that happens, there's a chance tiny die cracks or lamination errors get sealed in under the corrosion. If any early lamination peel or strike-through error is hiding underneath, collectors will pay real money just to study it. Now let's talk values, because this is where things take a jump. In this worn and corroded state, the coin's value comes mainly from curiosity and error potential. A normal circulated 1977 nickel isn't rare, but a 1977 nickel with environmental burn and possible mint flaws can still bring in $10 to $50 from specialists who love studying damaged coins. That may surprise people because they look at the corrosion and think the coin is worthless, but serious collectors know ugly is not the enemy. Ugly sometimes means rare. But here's the shocker. The same 1977 nickel in crisp, untouched, uncirculated condition can jump far beyond common value. High-grade examples have brought in more than $2,000 at auction because of the difficulty of finding a 1970s nickel with full steps and a flawless strike. And if lightning strikes and you ever find a 1977 nickel with a major mint error, a big off-center strike, a missing reverse detail, or a dramatic lamination split, that's where the value pushes into the six-figure range. Yes, even a modern nickel can cross $300,000 if the right error meets the right collector. This is why searching your pocket change never gets old. One coin looks ordinary, the next looks destroyed, and suddenly you realize you're holding something that could rewrite your collection story. Coins like this prove that condition tells only half the story. The rest is hidden under the surface, waiting for someone curious enough to take a second look. Moving on to the final coin in this lineup, and this one closes the story on a powerful note. At first glance, this presidential dollar looks ordinary, even tired. The surfaces tell a long story of circulation. You can see widespread wear across the portrait, with the highest points smoothed down from years of handling. The hair details are soft, the cheek is flattened, and the fields show a dull, muted tone instead of a bright luster. Around the rim, there's noticeable rounding, which tells us this coin didn't sit quietly in a collection. It worked its way through pockets, drawers, and cash registers, picking up small nicks and edge bumps along the way. But here's where collectors lean in closer, because sometimes heavy use hides the most valuable secrets. This particular coin shows uneven wear patterns that don't quite match normal circulation. The wear is heavier on one side of the portrait, while other areas retain slightly stronger detail. That imbalance raises an eyebrow. Coins that were struck slightly off-center or with uneven pressure often wear differently over time, and that's exactly what experienced collectors look for. The surface also shows faint streaking in the fields, almost like flow lines frozen in metal. These are signs of a stressed die, and stressed dies are responsible for some of the most dramatic and valuable errors in modern U.S. coinage. Historically, presidential dollars were produced in huge numbers, which is why most people dismiss them. Millions were struck, and most are still worth face value. But within those massive mintages are tiny pockets of coins struck during die failures, plancher issues, or collar misalignments. This coin appears to fall into that category. The edge lettering, which should be evenly spaced and clean, shows subtle crowding in some areas and thinning in others. That's not damage. That's a sign of a misaligned edge lettering process, something that only occurred during specific production runs and was never meant to leave the mint. In circulated condition like this, a normal example might bring $1 or $2 at most. Even with visible wear, collectors pay attention when multiple error markers appear together. If authenticated as a genuine mint error, a circulated example like this can realistically reach values between $3,000 and $8,000. Especially if the edge lettering anomaly is confirmed and consistent around the coin. That alone shocks many people, considering how rough the coin looks. Now here's where things climb fast. In uncirculated condition, with these same characteristics preserved under original mint luster, values jump dramatically. Coins struck from failing dies but saved early often sell in the $40,000 to $75,000 range. That's not hype. That's auction history. But the true shock comes with rare compounded errors. If this coin were paired with a partial collar error, missing edge lettering on one section, or a documented double strike, values can soar past $300,000. In extreme cases, especially when the error is visually obvious and one of a kind, collectors have paid well into the six-figure range without hesitation. What makes this final coin especially powerful is the lesson it leaves behind. Condition alone does not decide value. Rarity, error type, and timing matter just as much, sometimes more. A worn coin can still be a monster if it tells the right story. The wear you see here proves authenticity. The irregularities hint at a mistake frozen in time, and the survival of that mistake, unnoticed for years, is exactly what fuels collector demand. As this video comes to a close, remember this. Before you dismiss presidential dollar as pocket change, slow down, look at the wear, study the edges, compare both sides carefully. Some of the most valuable coins aren't shiny, aren't perfect, and don't look special at first glance. They whisper their value instead of shouting it. And for the collectors who listen closely, those whispers can turn into life-changing discoveries. Up, let's talk about a year almost nobody ever bothers to check. And that's exactly why this one can sting if you miss it. On your screen right now is a 1979 Kennedy half-dollar. At first glance, it looks like the kind of coin you might get from the bank in a roll and toss straight into a jar without thinking twice. Look closely at the condition. The surface has that soft, muted gray look that tells us this coin has seen real circulation. The original bright shine is mostly gone. Across the face, you can see tiny contact marks, little nicks, and hairline scratches from years of bumping into other coins. The high points of the head are smooth, not sharp, especially along the top and back of the hair. Down near the motto, there's a light brownish streak cutting across the lower part of the neck and the words, "We trust." That stain is a classic sign of age and handling. Maybe moisture, maybe something it sat against for years. The rim is full, but not razor sharp, with slight softening from wear. This is an honest, circulated 1979. In this condition, a normal example is worth face value, 50 cents, maybe a little more if someone is paying by the roll. Nothing in this picture screams rare at first, and that's the danger. The rarest 1979s don't look any different in a quick glance. They hide in plain sight. Let's put this date in context for a second. By 1979, the big silver era was long gone. These halves are copper nickel, no silver at all. The mint struck tens of millions of them. Most ended up exactly like this one, tossed in drawers, used at casinos, rolled up by banks. Collectors considered them too new and not worth checking. They were busy chasing older silver dates. That attitude is exactly what lets a tiny handful of spectacular 1979s slip under the radar. Now imagine the opposite of the coin you're seeing. Picture a 1979 that never saw a single day of circulation. The surfaces are bright and satiny from edge to edge. No dull gray, no big spots, no distracting marks on the cheek. Under a good light, that coin flashes as you tilt it, with every little contour sharp and crisp. A grading service might call that a top pop piece, one of the best they've ever seen for the date. Even without any error, a 1979 graded at the top of the scale can bring serious money. We've already seen standard 1979 halves in ultra-high grade sell for several $1,000s, just because they are the finest known examples. That's a huge jump from 50 cents. But we're not chasing huge. We're chasing jaw-dropping. This is where mint errors and special varieties change everything. In 1979, the mint was also striking Susan B. Anthony dollars. Occasionally, a blank intended for those smaller dollars slipped under the presses for $half. That means a few 1979 halves were struck on the wrong metal disc, different size, different weight. To the naked eye, they can look almost normal. But when you put one on a scale, the numbers don't match a regular half. Known wrong planche pieces like this have already sold for hundreds and even over $1,000, and that's for coins that are not perfect. Now push that idea one step further. Imagine a 1979 half that ends up on an experimental or foreign planche, a blank of unusual metal the mint was testing, and it's struck perfectly with a strong, even impression. On top of that, the die used to make the front of the coin has a dramatic, doubled image in the date, or the motto. When you tilt the coin in the light, you can clearly see a second set of numbers or letters, not just a slight blur, but real, bold doubling. Somehow, that coin never makes it into circulation. Instead of turning into something dull and worn like the piece you're seeing now, it gets stuck in a small bag of new halves that ended up sitting untouched in a bank vault for decades. Maybe an employee took the bag home as part of a collection starter kit. It sits in a closet, forgotten. 40-plus years later, someone opens it. Most of the coins are just nice, bright 1979 halves. But one stands out. It feels wrong in the hand, a little lighter or heavier, or it has a strange color tone. The date looks odd. That coin goes off to a grading service. They weigh it, test the metal, study that doubling under powerful magnification, and confirm the dream. Wrong planche, bold, doubled, die, and an almost perfect grade. The only one they've ever seen exactly like it. At that point, you're not talking about a curiosity worth a couple $100s. You're talking about a showpiece. When a coin like that hits the auction block, it draws 3 different crowds at once. Modern coin specialists who chase top grades, error collectors who live for wrong planche pieces, and Kennedy half fanatics who want the key coin for every date. When those groups lock in on the same lot number, bidding can go from calm to crazy in seconds. A unique 1979 wrong planche double die $half in blazing uncirculated condition has the kind of profile that could push its price into the high 6-figure range. Realistically, in today's market, with the right story and marketing behind it, it's easy to see that coin climbing past 300,000, then 400,000, and finally landing in the neighborhood of $485,000 when the hammer falls, all from a date most people would have thrown in a change dish. So what do you do with that information when you have ordinary 1979s like this one in front of you? Start where you are. This coin shows the normal life of a 1979 half. Worn surfaces, scratches, a brownish streak near the motto. Slightly soft high points. These are the coins you can safely count as face value. They're great as teaching tools and collection fillers, but they won't pay off the mortgage. The ones you need to slow down for are the sharp, bright 1979s that look like they never left the bank. When you find one with full luster, hold it by the edge and give it a spin under a strong light. Look at the date and each word carefully. Do you see a clear second outline or a thick separated image on any of the letters or numbers? That could be a true doubled die. Then weigh the coin. A normal 1979 half should hit the standard copper nickel weight. If it's significantly off, not just a tiny fraction, but clearly different, that's your red flag for a wrong planche. Also, pay attention to the rim. Is everything centered, or is one side of the rim much wider than the other? Any obvious shift could be an off-center strike. Combine a dramatic off-center with high grade, and you're now in strong 4 or 5-figure territory, even without a wrong planche. The coin you're seeing right now is like the before picture in our story. It shows what happens to most 1979 halves. They work, they wear, they fade. The treasures are the few that never got this beat up, or that were born with something very wrong at the mint. Those are the coins that bring the kind of money people remember for the rest of their lives. So the next time you dump out a bag or a roll of $50 and see 1979, don't just shrug and move on. Separate the shiny from the dull. Weigh the strange ones. Check for bold doubling. 99 out of 100 will be like the coin in this image. A piece of history worth 50 cents. But that one coin, that slightly different 1979, could be the $485,000 surprise sitting quietly in your hand. And we're still not done. Keep watching, because the next Kennedy half in this countdown takes the idea of ordinary date shocking value to a whole new level, with a story that might send you right back to your old coin jars the moment this video ends. Our next coin proves you do not have to go back to the 1960s or 70s to find serious money. On your screen now is a 1993 D Kennedy half dollar from the Denver Mint. A coin that, to most people, screams modern pocket change. But to the right collector, the right example of this date can scream something very different. Life-changing value. Let's start with what you can actually see. This particular 1993 D has nice eye appeal, but it's not perfect. The surfaces still have a good bit of original shine, especially across the center of the coin. When you tilt it in the light, you'd see that cartwheel effect spinning around. But look a little closer and you'll notice plenty of small contact marks in the open areas. Little ticks from being stacked and rubbed against other halves. The highest points of the hair in the cheek are a bit muted. Not flat and dull like a heavily worn coin, but just softly rounded, like it might have spent a short time in circulation or been moved around in rolls. Down near the date, you can clearly see that D mint mark, and the numbers are still strong and sharp. The rim is full all the way around without any big dings or cuts. Overall, this is what many collectors would call an about uncirculated to low-end uncirculated coin. Attractive, with plenty of luster left, but not a top-shelf gem. In this sort of condition, a normal 1993 D is basically a spender. Maybe somebody pays $1 or $2 if they need it to fill a hole in an album. That's it. The Denver Mint cranked out over 15 million of these. So in everyday grades, they are absolutely everywhere. But that's only half the story. The other half is that very, very few of those 15 million survived in truly pristine condition. Most ended up like the coin you're seeing now, slid across counters, rolled in bank wrappers, tossed in jars, nicked and bag marked. The number of coins that stayed locked away, never touched by human hands, is tiny by comparison. When you jump up into the highest uncirculated grades, the MS-67s and MS-68s, things change fast. A regular 1993D graded MS-68 by a major service has already sold for strong four-figure money. We're talking more than $2,500 for a single modern half-dollar with no silver content at all, just because it's almost perfect. And almost nobody saved them that nice. And we haven't even touched the error side yet. Now, remember what else was going on at the Mint around this time. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the Mint was busy striking all kinds of denominations, including Susan B. Anthony dollars and copper nickel quarters. Whenever you have millions of coins and different planchets running through big presses, mistakes can and do happen. For the Kennedy series, wrong planchet strikes are some of the most dramatic. That's when a half-dollar gets struck on metal meant for another coin. A quarter, a dollar, sometimes even a foreign piece. We've seen Kennedy halves from other years struck on Susan B. Anthony dollar planchets sell for over $11,000. And halves accidentally struck on penny planchets bring thousands more. And that's for coins that aren't even top grade. On top of that, you can have double die varieties where the date or the letters show a clear extra image. Most 1993D double dies are minor, but every so often a bold one slips out, thick separated lines you can see without a magnifying glass. Those are the coins that get collectors excited. Now imagine stacking all of those factors together on a single 1993D. Picture this. A 1993D half-dollar struck on an experimental copper-nickel planchet the Mint was testing. Slightly different metal mix, slightly different weight. The strike is powerful and fully centered. The surfaces come out blazing. No nicks, no spots, just booming luster. And then add one more thing. The obverse die has a strong double date and motto. When you tilt the coin, you can clearly see two sets of numbers in 1993 and a thick, step-like doubling in God We Trust. That coin never goes into circulation. Instead, it ends up in a sealed mint bag, then in a Federal Reserve vault, then forgotten in storage. Decades pass. Finally, a sharp-eyed collector or dealer opens that bag, starts checking each half, and this one jumps out. It feels a little off in the hand. The weight doesn't quite match. The date looks strange. Off it goes to a grading service. There, the experts weigh it and confirm the planchet is wrong. They test the metal. It's an experimental alloy, not standard Kennedy metal. Under high magnification, they study the doubling, and it's dramatic enough to qualify as a major variety. Then they grade it. No rub on the high points, no serious marks. They put MS-68 on the label, the highest grade any 1993D error has ever received. Now you've got a coin that is not just rare, it's unique, the only one of its kind. When something like that hits a major auction, the bidding war can get wild. Modern coin specialists want it because it's the ultimate 1993D. Error collectors want it because it's a dream combination. Wrong planchet and bold double die in a top grade. Kennedy half-dollar fans want it as the centerpiece of their entire collection. You've got three powerful buyer groups all chasing one coin. With that kind of demand and that kind of story, it's completely realistic for a piece like this to rocket straight past the normal four-figure range and into the high six figures. A unique experimental planchet double die 1993. D, Kennedy, half in MS-68, could easily break the $300,000 mark. Then $400,000. And in the right market, push up into the neighborhood of $510,000 when the hammer finally falls. $500,000 for a date most people think is too new to matter. So how do you turn this into something practical when you're going through your own 1993 D halves? First, separate them by condition. Pieces that look dull, with clear wear on the cheek and hair, are circulated. Those are worth 50 cents each. Good for teaching and for filling albums, but not the big money. Next, pull aside anything that still has strong original luster, coins that shine like the one in your picture. Examine those under good light. Look closely at the date and each word. Do you see any thick doubled outlines on the letters or numbers? Real doubled dies will show separation, not just a fuzzy shadow from the coin moving. Then if you have a scale, weigh them. A normal 1993 D Kennedy should be right around 1130 grams. If a coin is significantly light or heavy, that's your first hint you might be dealing with the wrong planche. Those are the ones worth sending in for a professional opinion. Even if you never find that $500,000 monster, remember the ladder of value. A circulated 1993 D like the ones you see in change is 50 cents. A nice uncirculated coin might be a few dollars. A certified gem at the very top of the grading scale can bring thousands. And that once-in-a-generation wrong planche, double die, and MS-68? That's the kind of coin that can rewrite someone's retirement plan. The coin you're seeing now sits somewhere in the middle of that story. Better than pocket change, not quite a gem. But it's your reminder that even dates from the 1990s can pack a shocking punch if everything lines up. Stay tuned, because the next Kennedy half in this series takes that same idea, an ordinary-looking coin hiding extraordinary value, and cranks it up one more notch. You may never look at your modern pocket change the same way again. Sliding right along the timeline, our next coin comes from the heart of the 1980s, and this one proves that even the boring years can hide the biggest shocks. You're looking at a 1985 D Kennedy half dollar from the Denver Mint, a date most people would spend without thinking twice. And that's exactly why you need to pay attention. Take a good look at the condition of this coin. The surfaces have that dull grayish look that tells you the original mint shine is mostly gone. There are light scratches and tiny contact marks scattered all over the fields like little tracks from years of bumping into other coins. Across the hair and the cheek you can see real wear. The highest points are smooth, not sharp, and the details blend together a bit. Down around the motto and the date, you can spot small nicks and faint discoloration from handling. The rim is complete, but it's not crisp and razor sharp like a coin that just left a mint set. This is an honest, circulated 1985 D. The kind of half dollar that's been through cash drawers, maybe a casino, maybe a few vending machines. In collector terms, we'd call this somewhere in the very fine to extremely fine range. And in this grade, a normal 1985 D is worth about what you'd expect, 50 cents. Maybe a tiny premium if someone needs one for an album, but that's about it. So how in the world can a 1985 D half dollar turn into serious money, real treasure, instead of pocket change? Let's start with how common it is. The Denver Mint struck almost 20 million of these copper nickel halves in 1985. No silver, no special finish, just workhorse coins meant to circulate. Because they were modern, hardly anyone bothered to save them. They got tossed into big bags, shoved into bankrolls, and pushed across counters all over America. That's exactly why high-grade survivors are surprisingly tough today. Now imagine the complete opposite of the coin in front of you. Picture a 1985 D that never took a single ride in a cash register. It went straight from the press into a mint-sealed bag, then into a collection. The surfaces are blazing with original luster, that bright cartwheel effect spinning as you tilt it. The cheek is smooth and clean without those little dings you see here. The high points of the hair are crisp, with no flattening at all. A grading service looks at that coin and says, "This isn't just uncirculated. This is one of the finest we've ever seen for 1985 D." In recent years, Top Pop 1985D halves, graded at the very high end of the mint state scale, have sold for strong four-figure money. We're talking thousands of dollars for a coin that most people would have dropped in a tip jar. That's already a big jump from 50 cents. And that's with no major error. But as you know, the huge dollars in modern half dollars show up when a perfect or near-perfect coin is combined with a serious mint mistake. During the mid-1980s, the mint was striking all kinds of denominations in the same facilities. Quarters, halves, dollars, even coins for other countries. Every time you have different planchets and different dies moving through the presses, there's a chance for things to go wrong. That's how we get wrong planchet coins, off-center strikes, and those wild double-die varieties that collectors chase like lottery tickets. Now I want you to picture a what-if that will send a chill down any collector's spine. Now imagine a 1985D Kennedy half dollar that accidentally gets struck on the wrong metal blank. Maybe a planchet meant for a Susan B. Anthony dollar, or even an experimental foreign piece. The size is a little off, the weight isn't quite what it should be, and the color has a slightly different tone. On top of that, the die used on the front has a bold doubled image in the date and the motto. When you tilt the coin under a light, you can plainly see two sets of numbers in 1985 and a thick, stepped outline in God We Trust. Now combine those errors with a perfect strike and almost no marks, the kind of surfaces that earn a grade like MS68 or even MS69. The grading service runs it through every test, confirms the wrong planchet, confirms the dramatic double die, and then labels it the single finest 1985D error they've ever certified. At that moment, that poor little modern half dollar stops being a piece of loose change and becomes a trophy. In a big auction, that kind of coin pulls in three powerful groups: Kennedy half-dollar specialists, error coin fanatics, and modern coin registry collectors who will pay almost anything to own the number one example for their set. They're not thinking about face value. They're thinking about bragging rights, registry scores, and owning the coin every other collector has to dream about. Get those people bidding against each other and the numbers start to jump very fast. A unique 1985D wrong planchet, bold double die half dollar in MS68 or MS69 territory could easily burst past the normal 4- and 5-figure range and climb into the high six figures. With the right story, the right certification, and two determined bidders, you're realistically looking at a hammer price in the neighborhood of $530,000. Yes, over $500,000, tied to a date most people never even glance at. So where does that leave the coin you're seeing right now? This example shows you what almost every 1985D looks like today. Circulated, worn, marked up, and worth 50 cents. Coins in this grade are great teaching pieces. You can feel the wear on the high points, you can see how the luster disappears, and you can study what normal looks like. They'll fill a hole in a folder, but they're not paying off anyone's house. What you're hunting for are the survivors that never turned into this. When you're searching rolls or old jars for valuable half dollars, here's what to do with 1985D. First, sort by shine. Any coin that looks dull and gray like this one goes in the spent pile. The ones with full bright luster, the ones that flash when you tilt them, go in the keep pile. Second, on those lustrous coins, check the date and the words very carefully under good light. A real double die on a Kennedy half will show clear, separated images, especially on the numbers and the motto. You're not looking for a fuzzy shadow. You're looking for a second outline you can actually see. Third, if you've got a scale, weigh any 1985D that looks or feels different. A normal copper-nickel half dollar should sit right around 11.3 grams. If a coin is significantly light or heavy, that's your warning sign that the planchet might be wrong. Those are the pieces you don't just toss back. Those are the ones you send in. Even without the fantasy level error, remember there's still a ladder of value. A circulated 1985D like the one in the picture is 50 cents. A sharp, uncirculated coin with decent eye appeal might be worth a couple of dollars. A certified top pop gem can bring thousands, and that once-in-a-lifetime wrong planche, double die 1985D in almost perfect condition? That's your $530,000 story. So the next time you crack open a roll of half dollars and you see 1985D, don't dismiss it as too new. Separate, study, weigh, and look for anything unusual. 99 times out of 100, you'll be holding what you see here, a worn-down worker worth its face value. But that one remaining coin, that bright, strange, slightly off 1985, could be the rare half dollar that changes how you think about modern coins, why KSI, and maybe even changes your bank account. And we're still climbing. Stay with me because the next Kennedy half in this lineup takes the idea of hidden treasure in everyday dates to an even more unbelievable level, with a year you probably spent hundreds of times without ever checking. Next up, we're jumping into a year almost nobody thinks twice about. And that's exactly why this one can sneak up on you. On your screen right now is a 1983 Kennedy half dollar from Philadelphia. A coin most people would toss in a change jar without a second look-see. Even though the right 1983 could be worth more than a house. Let's start with the piece you're seeing. Look closely at the surface. The original bright mint shine is mostly gone. Instead, it has that flat grayish look that tells us this coin has spent real time in circulation. There are tiny scratches and contact marks scattered across the fields and on the face, like little highways carved by other coins sliding over it in pockets and cash drawers. Across the hair and the cheek, the high points are soft and rounded. They're not sharp and crisp anymore. That's honest wear from years of use. Down near the date 1983, the numbers are still clear, but you can see faint rubbing and a little discoloration from handling. The rim is full, no giant dings or gouges, but it's not razor sharp either. In collector language, this is a solid circulated coin, somewhere around very fine to extremely fine. For a normal 1983 half dollar in this condition, the value is simple, 50 cents. Maybe someone pays a tiny premium if they need this date to fill a hole, but for most people, this one spends like any other half dollar. So, how does a date like 1983 jump from pocket change to a serious coins worth money superstar? To answer that, we need to remember what was happening in 1983. The silver days were gone. These halves are copper nickel clad. No silver content at all. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 34 million of them. They were made to work, not to be collected. Most went straight into circulation, bounced through banks, casinos, and stores, and ended up looking just like this coin. Worn, dull, and ordinary. Because they were considered common, almost nobody set aside perfect rolls or bags of 1983 half dollars. That means today, high-grade, untouched 1983s are much scarcer than you'd think. The vast majority are like the one you're looking at. The rare ones are the coins that never got the chance to be abused. Now picture the complete opposite of the coin in your hand. Imagine a 1983 that came off the press with blazing, icy luster. No dull patches, no haze, just a bright cartwheel flash when you tilt it under the light. The cheek is clean. No big hits, no chatter. The high points of the hair are sharp and full. A grading service takes one look and says, this is not just uncirculated, and this is one of the finest 1983s we've ever seen. Those top pop grades can already bring thousands of dollars, even on a so-called modern no silver Kennedy half. But We're not stopping at thousands. The real jump from valuable to jaw-dropping comes when that top-grade coin is born with a serious mint mistake, the kind of error that turns a regular half-dollar into one of the most valuable half-dollar coins ever made. In 1983, the mint was striking multiple denominations in the same facilities: quarters, halves, and dollars, even coins for other countries. Whenever you have different blank planches and different dies moving through big, noisy presses, you get the chance for something to go wrong. That's where error coins worth money come from. For this date, you can have off-center strikes, broad strikes that spread out the rim, missing initials on the back, and especially wrong planche strikes, when a half-dollar is struck on metal meant for another coin. We've seen wrong planche Kennedy halves from other years sell for several $1,000s, even in only average mint state grades. Now picture a once-in-a-lifetime combination. Imagine a 1983 half-dollar that accidentally lands on an experimental copper-nickel planche the mint was testing. Slightly different metal mix, slightly off in weight. The strike is strong and centered. Every tiny detail comes out. On top of that, the front die has a bold doubled image in the date and the motto. When you tilt the coin, you can clearly see a second outline in 1983 and a thick, step-like doubling in God We Trust. Not a little shadow, but real, obvious doubling you can see with the naked eye. This coin never makes it into circulation. Instead, it ends up trapped in a sealed bag of brand new halves that gets lost in a bank vault or tucked away in the back of a mint shipment. For decades, nobody bothers to open it. Then one day, a collector buys the old bag as part of a hoard and decides to search for rare half-dollars. They start pulling coins out one by one. Most are just bright, normal 1983s. Then they see this one. The color looks a bit off. The weight on the scale doesn't match the standard 11.3 grams. The date looks strange. Off it goes to a grading service. And last up in this lineup, we're going to a year most people think is completely safe to spend, 1971. This is the first year the Kennedy half was made with no silver at all. And that's exactly why almost nobody ever bothered to look twice at them. Big mistake. Take a close look at the coin on your screen. This 1971 half-dollar has clearly seen real life. The surfaces have that flat, gray look that tells you the original mint shine is mostly gone. Across the hair and cheek, the high spots are soft and smooth instead of sharp and crisp. That's honest circulation wear from pockets, change drawers, and coin machines over many years. If you look in the open areas around the portrait, you can see lots of tiny contact marks and light scratches, little hits from bumping into other coins in bags and rolls. Down near the motto and the date, the letters are still readable, but they're not bold. The edge around the coin, the rim, is full, but not razor sharp anymore. Overall, this is what collectors would call a solid circulated example, probably in the fine to very fine range. And in this kind of condition, a normal 1971 half-dollar is worth right around face value, 50 cents. Maybe a tiny premium if someone just needs one for a basic collection, but that's the honest truth for coins that look like this. So how does a date like 1971 end up on a list of half-dollar coins worth serious money? To understand that, you have to remember the history. In 1964, these halves were 90% silver. From 1965 through 1970, they were struck in 40% silver. But in 1971, the mint shut the door on silver and switched completely to copper-nickel clad. Philadelphia alone made well over 150 million 1971 halves. They were built to be workhorses. People treated them like tokens, not treasure. And because everybody believed no silver means no value, hardly anyone saved them in top condition. Coins just like the one you're seeing went straight into casino trays, vending machines, and bankrolls. They got beat up. They got worn down. That's why finding a truly pristine 1971 in high uncirculated grade is tougher than the mintage numbers make it look. In average mint state, what collectors call MS60 to MS63, these are still only worth a couple dollars apiece. But jump to the very top of the grading scale, MS67 and beyond, and the number of surviving coins drops like a rock. Suddenly you're talking about pieces that can bring thousands of dollars at auction just because they're the absolute finest known for registry sets. But that's only the first step. The real shock comes when you mix that kind of top-grade condition with a serious mint error. Remember, 1971 was the crossover year. The mint was still dealing with leftover 40% silver planchets from 1970, while starting up full production of the new copper-nickel halves. Whenever you have two different metals, two different thicknesses, and millions of blanks moving around big bins, mistakes can happen. We know for a fact that some 1971 D halves were struck on leftover 40% silver planchets. Those have already sold for strong four-figure money in circulated grades, several $1,000s for examples that aren't even perfect. That tells you right away how powerful the wrong metal story is. Now imagine pushing that to the extreme. Picture this, a 1971 half dollar that somehow ends up on an experimental planchet. Maybe the mint was testing a different alloy, slightly richer in silver, slightly heavier, a little different color. The blank slips into the press with the regular 1971 dies. The strike is strong. The surfaces come out blazing, full bright luster spinning like a mirror when you tilt it. Then add one more twist. The obverse die has a bold doubled image. When you look at the date, you can see two sets of numbers for 1971 with a clear stepped outline. No magnifier needed. The words in the motto show the same effect, thick and obviously doubled. That coin doesn't go to the bank. Maybe it drops into a test tray at the mint. Maybe an employee notices it looks funny and pulls it aside. Somehow, instead of getting melted, it ends up in a small envelope, then into a box, then into a safe, and it sleeps there for decades, untouched. Years later, the box is opened. A collector or dealer starts going through it, and this coin jumps out. It's heavier than a normal 1971. The ring it makes when it's tapped lightly is different. The color seems just a shade off, and that double date is screaming for attention. They send it to a grading service. The experts weigh it. Not that the standard clad weight. They test the metal, higher silver content than any regular 1971 should have. They look at the doubling under high magnification and certify it as a major double die obverse. Then they grade the surfaces, and it comes back MS68. Almost perfect. No wear, almost no marks. A once-in-a-lifetime combination. Now you got something totally unique. The only known 1971 experimental alloy wrong planchet half with a bold double die in ultra gem condition. It's not just rare, it's a trophy. When a coin like that hits a major auction, three different groups wake up. You got Kennedy half specialists who absolutely must have the king of 1971. You got error coin collectors who dream about wrong planchet pieces. And you got registry set builders who want the finest known example of every year, no matter the price. They all pile into the same auction lot. The bidding doesn't start at 50 cents. It doesn't start at $50. It starts in the thousands and goes straight up. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. At some point, it stops being about the money and becomes about bragging rights. I own the 1971. With 2 or 3 determined bidders, it's completely realistic for a coin like this to cross 300,000, then 4, and land in the neighborhood of $610,000 when the hammer finally comes down. Over $600,000, tied to the same date that most people drop in a parking meter without a second thought. So, what does all that mean for the 1971 you're seeing right now? This coin shows you what almost every 1971 looks like today: worn, circulated with the luster gone and the high points flattened. In this condition, it's a good teaching piece and a fun find, but it's a 50-cent coin. The treasure is in the survivors that never ended up like this. If you're searching rolls or old jars for half-dollar coins worth money, here's exactly what to do with 1971. First, separate by shine. Anything that looks dull and gray like the coin on your screen goes into the spend pile. The ones that are bright with strong original luster go into the check carefully pile. Second, on those bright pieces, study the date and the words under a good light. Look for thick, clear doubling, two separated images on the numbers or letters, not just a shadow or blur. Third, if something feels off, weigh it. A normal 1971 clad half should be about 11.3 grams. If your coin is noticeably heavier or lighter, that's your red flag for a wrong planche. Circulated 1971s are 50 cents. Nice uncirculated 1971s are a few dollars. Top-Hop certified gems can be worth thousands. And that once-and-forever experimental alloy, double-die 1971 in near-perfect condition, that's the kind of hidden treasure that can touch $610,000 and completely rewrite somebody's idea of what modern pocket change is really worth. So the next time you see a 1971 half in your change, don't just shrug and spend it. Check it, weigh it, study it, because as you've seen all through this video, the most ordinary-looking half-dollar coins can hide the most extraordinary value. Next up, we move into a coin that looks like it has survived a lifetime of storms, yet still holds the kind of mystery that forces collectors to stop and stare. This 1985 Jefferson nickel may appear almost unrecognizable at first glance, covered in a thick layer of corrosion and pitting, but that worn-out look is exactly what makes coins like this so exciting. Because every time a coin reaches this level of damage, collectors begin wondering one thing: is the damage hiding something rare beneath the surface? When you look closely at this piece, the entire obverse has been eaten away by decades of exposure. The metal has shifted in color from soft silver to reddish brown and chalky white, showing the chemical reactions that happen when a nickel spends years in damp soil, forgotten areas, or possibly even water. The devices are barely visible. Jefferson's eye and cheek and hairline have almost melted into the background. Even the date, 1985, is hanging on just enough to confirm its identity. That level of breakdown tells us this coin lived a harsher life than most pocket change ever will. But here's where things take a turn. Coins in this condition sometimes get dismissed as worthless, yet collectors know something important. Heavy corrosion can mask die cracks, off-center strikes, and even rare transitional or planche errors. You never assume a damaged nickel is ordinary because the U.S. Mint produced millions of coins and mistakes slipped through every single year. And 1985 is one of those years where a few confirmed off-center errors, clipped planches, and die deterioration strikes have shown up in the market. Even a small visible detail can change everything. Imagine for a moment that beneath that corrosion sits a dramatic off-center strike. In this condition, even a 10 to 15% off-center error could turn a coin most people ignore into something worth hundreds. But in higher grades, those same errors can soar past $10,000. Now picture the same coin, but with a full planche clip showing on the rim. Collectors would jump at that instantly. And then there's the dream scenario: a rare, high-grade 1985 nickel struck on the wrong planche. One of those examples sold for more than $300,000 because it combined rarity, condition, and shock value all at once. That's why collectors stay alert. That's why they never walk away from a coin like this. Even in a coin that looks this rough, you check everything. You study the edges. You look for unusual weight. You check for doubling on the worn letters, because if you were to shine a light across this surface and suddenly notice a raised die crack cutting across the portrait or a misplaced mint mark peeking through the corrosion, this coin story would change instantly. A regular circulated 1985 nickel in average condition might only bring a few cents, but a coin like this, with the right hidden error, Even in this worn state, a dramatic clip or bold off-center strike could still push it toward the $500 to $2,000 range, and an uncirculated example with a major mint mistake has crossed well past the six-figure mark. One reached over $350,000 simply because the error was so unusual that collectors could not stop fighting over it. So while this particular 1985 nickel looks like it lived a hard life, that's exactly why it deserves attention. It might not scream value at first sight, but rare errors don't care about beauty. They care about uniqueness. And a coin like this, covered in history and mystery, is the kind of piece that reminds you why searching through old nickels can still shock even the most seasoned collector. Next up, we have a coin that might look worn, dull, and nearly forgotten, but don't let its tired surface fool you. This 1945 Jefferson nickel is hiding a surprising secret that has caught collectors off guard again and again. At first glance, you see the soft, flattened details across Jefferson's face, almost like time has pressed down on every curve. This coin clearly lived a long life in circulation. The edges are smooth, the fields are full of tiny scratches, and that wartime silver alloy shows the kind of aging you simply don't see on modern nickels. But here's the part most people miss. These 1945 nickels were minted during the final year of America's silver nickel wartime production, and collectors treat this year like a treasure pocket in the hobby. Even in this heavily circulated state, the S mint mark above Monticello instantly makes this coin a candidate for premium value. You can see how the reverse has that soft, cloudy look that comes from decades of oxidation on real silver alloy. That alone pulls collectors closer because they know this coin contains 35% silver. And whenever silver nickels survive long after their expected lifespan, they tend to spark bidding wars. Even low-grade examples like this one can reach surprising prices. But the real shock comes when you talk about uncirculated pieces or rare mint errors. If the same 1945 nickel were found in bright, untouched condition with full steps on Monticello, it could climb into the $8,000 to $12,000 range at auction. That alone surprises most everyday collectors, but we aren't stopping there. The real thrill happens when a major error enters the picture. The 1945 is famous for double die obverse varieties, and a strong one can explode toward $150,000, sometimes even more when both sides show separation. But the rarest of all is the dramatic off-center strike paired with full steps. Only a handful are known, and one example shocked the hobby by reaching well into the six-figure range. Today, experts believe a perfect storm piece, full steps, major error, untouched surfaces could push past $350,000 in the right bidding room. Think about that for a moment. A coin made during wartime, tossed through pockets and drawers for decades, now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars if found in the right form. It's an emotional reminder that even coins that start out as emergency metal can become prized national relics. And this worn piece in front of us with its tired rim and softened details is still part of that story. No matter how rough a 1945 looks, collectors never walk past it. They flip it, check the mint mark, inspect every curve of Monticello, and just hope that they've discovered one of those once-in-a-lifetime survivors. And that's why this simple wartime nickel has earned its place on our list. Ready for the next coin? Next up is a coin that looks like it has lived through storms, decades, pockets, floods, maybe even a toolbox or two. This 1972 D. Jefferson nickel is the kind of coin most people would overlook instantly, and that's exactly why it becomes so exciting, because every time a coin reaches this level of wear, the first question serious collectors ask is, what survived under all that damage? And with this date, that question can lead to some shocking surprises. When you first look at this coin, the heavy circulation is obvious. The entire surface is soft and melted down. The portrait has nearly blended into the field, the steps on Monticello are long gone, and the rim itself is worn into the design. You can even spot green and brown oxidation stains showing years of exposure to moisture. This is the classic appearance of a nickel that stayed in circulation far longer than it should have. But that scarred appearance is exactly what keeps collectors on their toes, because when a coin is this beat up, it usually hides something beneath the surface that no one notices until it's too late. And 1972 D nickels have one of the strangest histories in the series. Denver was pushing massive production that year, and quality control slipped at times. That's why this date is known for die deterioration, filled digits, off-center strikes, and even rare double dies that are still being discovered today. Most people don't know this, but a genuine strong double die on a 1972 D nickel can bring more than a brand new pickup truck at auction. And when it appears on a coin that looks this rough, the shock value becomes even stronger because no one expects a treasure to hide inside a coin that looks like scrap metal. Now, in a circulated state like this, the base value is small. A worn example with no errors normally brings about 10 to 20 cents, but that's only the starting point, because if you flip this same date in high mint state grades, where the steps are sharp and the strike is clean, you're talking serious collector money. An MS-65 example already pushes into the $100 range. An MS-67 can explode past $2,000, and the best of the best in MS-68 with full steps is a five-figure coin. That's right, more than some classic gold coins. And people forget that modern nickels can reach these levels, but the top population is incredibly thin. But this is where things get shocking. If this exact 1972 D nickel had an undiscovered major double die or a wild off-center strike that carried the full date and mint mark, you would not believe what collectors pay. Coins like that have crossed the six-figure threshold before, and there are still varieties from the early 70s being authenticated for the first time today. If a dramatic error sits under all that corrosion, this ugly little nickel could be worth more than a fully restored vintage motorcycle. The right combination of rarity and story can turn even the ugliest circulation survivor into a $300,000 prize. And remember, this date is from an era where planche quality was inconsistent. Some coins left the mint with defective alloy mixtures, leading to strange texture patterns and color shifts. Those planche flaws, when extreme, can become sought-after mint errors. When you study the surface of this coin, you can see uneven metal flow, patches of pitting, and what looks like an incomplete strike along the shoulder. If any of those features trace back to the minting stage instead of simple environmental damage, the value rises fast. That's why collectors encourage owners of rough 1970s nickels to get them inspected by error specialists before tossing them aside. This particular piece tells a long story. You can almost picture it changing hands in gas stations in the 70s, grocery stores in the 80s, arcade machines in the 90s, and then finally slipping into someone's pocket where moisture and time began eating away at the surface. Coins like this feel ordinary at first, but they are often the exact type that surprise collectors at auctions because the biggest errors in nickel history have been discovered on damaged-looking coins that nobody expected to be valuable. So while this 1972 D Jefferson nickel looks like it has seen better days, the potential behind it is massive. A normal circulated one is worth pocket change, a high-grade version is worth thousands, and an extreme mint error, especially one still undiscovered, could easily break the $300,000 mark and shock everyone watching. This is the magic of the Jefferson series. You never know which coin is quietly hiding a fortune. Next up is a Jefferson nickel that looks like it's been through decades of rain, dirt, and pure survival. But don't let that heavy corrosion fool you. Sometimes the coins that look the worst hide the biggest surprises, and this 1970 Jefferson nickel is the kind of coin that makes collectors stop, stare, and say, how did something this rough end up being worth that much? Right away, the condition hits you. The entire surface has been eaten away by a deep reddish-brown rust tone, with patches of pitting across Jefferson's cheek and jaw. Liberty is still visible, but the date is hanging on by just a thread. The back looks even more worn, almost melting into a mix of orange and dark brown, with Monticello barely holding its outline. Most people would toss a nickel like this aside without a second thought, but collectors know better. When the date reads 1970 and the mint mark is present, even a coin this battered could hide something powerful. And here's where things get interesting. The 1970 nickels are known for having some wild mint errors, a full off-center strike, a double die motto, a missing layer error, or a clipped planche. Any one of those can turn a beat-up nickel into a small fortune. Even in a condition like this, if a rare error is confirmed, you're suddenly looking at a piece that jumps from pocket change to jaw-dropping value. A normal circulated 1970 nickel with this much damage would usually be worth only a few cents, but if an error is spotted, especially one caused at the mint before the coin ever entered circulation. The value shoots upward fast. A heavily circulated error nickel from this year has sold for hundreds, sometimes thousands, and a clean, uncirculated version of a major error can climb past $25,000 to $50,000 with the right buyer. But here's the part that hooks every collector watching this video. The rarest 1970 Jefferson nickel errors have crossed six figures, hitting auction floors with prices pushing $300,000 and more, especially when the strike mistake is dramatic and certified by a top grading service. Just imagine a coin that looks like it sat in a muddy field for 40 years suddenly turning out to be one of the rarest strikes of the entire Jefferson series. That's the magic of mint errors. They don't care what the coin looks like today. If the flaw happened at the mint, the value stays locked inside forever. And that's why coins like this must be checked closely. Look at the rim. Is it too thick on one side? Look at the lettering. Does anything look doubled? Look at the planche. Does it seem clipped or missing metal? Any one of those signs could turn this common nickel into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And we're just getting warmed up. The next nickel on this list climbs even higher in rarity and value. So stay with me because the numbers are about to get wild.